Hey everybody, welcome back to the Yellow Box Podcast. I'm here with my friend, as always, Nick Adjamuti, and over there at the producer table is Tristan Smith.
What's up, guys?
Tristan Trey Smith. His social security now. I'm just kidding.
Hey, we're all together.
We're all together. We're all together in a physical space. As you can probably tell, it's a little bit different from our normal podcast where we're like all spliced together. Basically, we use a tool called Riverside to video each other in.
Don't give them our secrets.
Don't give them our secrets. Because it records at 1080 on that. Well, today we're recording in 4K, and we have multiple angles, and we have this nice podcast setup.
And we also have that, which I'm going to read to everybody.
And there's a helicopter flying overhead, too, which you can hear. It's a part of this. We're actually recording this in downtown Houston right now. And so
there's trains, there's helicopters, there's trucks.
There's zombies.
This is real life.
There was a horde of zombies that came by earlier, and we had to duck and cover to stay alive. It was really, really interesting.
Yellow Box. So we exist to inspire, encourage, and equip the local church with the resources, skills, and teams they need to communicate the gospel. Another way to say that is we exist to develop creativity in the local church.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're listening to this podcast, welcome. Again, we're so glad you're here. Today's topic is...
We're going to be talking about messaging matters.
Messaging matters. What is messaging? iMessage?
iMessage matters. No, messaging is essentially obviously you use it every day without realizing it. It's what you say on your social media. It's what you put on your website. It's how you communicate what you're doing at your church. Captions. All those things are part of your messaging. And a lot of times we don't really have a strategy. A lot of times churches end up without a strategy for that. And it's just a conglomeration of different ideas, and they all feel and sound like they're from different people because they probably are. Mm-hmm. So the idea of how to align your messaging is what we're going to be covering today.
Yeah. I mean, essentially your language does create your culture, whether you understand that or not. So every Sunday you have a chance to build onto your culture because you're communicating language. Yeah. There's language being spoken and sung from your stage. When people walk into your lobbies, into your parking lots, they're seeing words. I don't have words. But
words are hard.
But words are hard, but words matter. And they are creating culture. And so every week you get to add to that culture. And I think it's an interesting topic for me because there's always a balance of being relevant, but then also not trying too hard or not trying to be super on trend all the way, all the time, right? I think a lot of churches see a trend, love a trend, and try to hop on it, whereas you have to ask yourself, what is our culture? And are we staying true to our culture if we hop on a trend? It may be different every time, by the way. But we have to continually ask ourselves that question. And so, let's talk a little bit about how messaging and language connects to creative, which is design and video and all of that other stuff. Is there a connection? Should there be a connection?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, first off, from a creative standpoint, messaging helps guide design and creative, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you are going to have key call outs of messaging in your designs, you got to know what they are. You can't really have the same call out with lips and murum, as you can with a really powerful statement, right? Yeah. And so what are the statements that align? Let's say you're doing a series. Let's say you're doing a design for a series, or you're doing creative for a series.
Okay.
And
what's a series?
A series, a concept.
No, right? I know. What is it? What's the series going to be?
What's the series going to be called?
I can't think about it.
Trust issues.
Trust issues. All
so
right,
we're going to have a series called Trust Issues.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I was like, you're asking me what a series is.
What
I'm
is
like,
a series?
is this like a leading conversation? No. Just so you guys know, anytime you're out in public with Nick, under any circumstances, it's actually like you're in a podcast in real life. Like there are questions that just hit you.
Is that a compliment?
Yeah, it totally is. Because you're like, tell me more about that. You're like, yeah, that's a really great point, Kevin. Tell me more. And you're like, is this like we're in real life with people?
I do think we're flowing better because when we're on Zoom, we're really friendly. Mm-hmm. Or Riverside or whatever it is that we're using. Like I let you finish, you let me finish. Now we're talking over each other, which is
great.
Better.
I love it.
So good.
So all right, so the series is called Trust Issues, right?
Trust Issues.
So give me a good example. All right, so first of all, let's nail this out. We know we got designs we have to do for social.
Yep.
We have designs for screens, and we have a synopsis for the series that we want to include on some marketing. Right? We're going to have an invite card. Mm-hmm. So we have the title, tagline, synopsis. Those are the three primary uses of copy for like a series, right? Title, tagline, synopsis.
Okay.
Hit me.
So we already have the title, Trust Issues.
Trust issues.
The tagline, Can You Trust Again?
Ooh.
It's a challenge. It's a question.
Yeah. So can you trust again? So tagline is, can you trust? You guys, you feel free to use this. What is the synopsis? Really, when we talk about synopsis, what we're trying to describe is a brief couple of sentences, 3 sentences, paragraph that explains what the series is about and why people should come to it, right? So this is great messaging content, and it's vital if you really want to nail your communication. So give me right off the top of your, come on, you got this.
Okay,
you got this.
Okay. So there is a direct correlation between trust and faith. If I have faith in something, then I can trust it, right? So this is a series on faith. Can I trust God? Does that relationship need repair? Can I trust my family, my close relationships? And can I trust my church? Can I trust the vision and the DNA of my church? And so there's 3 weeks right there. There could be a 4th week. I don't know. What do you think, Tristan?
Could you do a 3-part, like a 3-part series? It could be 4th, but on can I trust God? Can I trust people? Can I trust the church? So that people aren't so you have one that's focused on family, focused on friends, focused on the people in the church, and then you lead from the people in the church into, can I trust the church? Can I trust the bride of Christ again? Even though they hurt me, even though they're the ones where even though that's where I left God and everything.
Yeah. I would even do another one too, because sometimes there's a difference between church and leaders. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So some people say, I don't have a problem with the church, but I just have a problem with the people in the church or whatever. So that could even be another week. There could be 2 parts to that.
Can you trust the people?
Yeah. Can you trust the people beyond like just your family or, within your marriage? That's my synopsis.
I think that's great. So obviously this is all like out there.
We didn't talk about this beforehand, by the way.
No, we didn't. This is ad-libbing. But the reality is, like, that's the kind of thought that you guys need to put into your messaging and why messaging matters. Yeah. For something as small as a series, it matters for something like an event. Hey, we're doing a cookout. Why should I come to this cookout? What does it matter? Why do I need to be here? Yep. If you don't actually align and decide that content, you decided the graphics because you feel like that matters, but you didn't decide the content that you're going to share, the copy that you're going to share. And so messaging is just as much a part of that as the creative is.
Yeah, let me give you an example of some messaging that's probably what I think is not effective, or maybe a better word would be inefficient.
This piece of mail could change your life.
So the idea, I don't know if you guys have ever been to.
And everybody uses that. I'm tired of it.
No, it's okay. Played. It's okay. Every church is like this, right? We have a lot of things going on, and it's like, hey guys, I just want to tell you that we have a barbecue coming up. It's going to be awesome. You should come. It's going to change your life. And then also the next week we have a women's Bible study happening. Guys, it is going to be awesome. You don't want to miss it. Followed by the next week we have our big youth meeting happening. It's going to be awesome, and you don't want to miss it. It's going to change your life.
Everything is important.
So it's like Lego, the Lego movie. If everything is awesome, then actually nothing is awesome.
Yeah.
And so part of what we value creatively is if your messaging is oversaturating, then it's actually going to decrease the effectiveness of what you're trying to accomplish within your church. So your marketing team and your creative department has to work well with your marketing team and your comms, I guess. We use the word marcoms now, right? So marketing and communications, but they have to work close. Those people have to work closely with your creative team to understand what are we actually trying to say. For example, if a big core value of your church is community, then you have to ask yourself, what are the community events that we have coming up? And how can we even use maybe some of that same language to apply to the men's event and to apply to the women's event and to apply to a small groups thing that's happening? And how can we thread the needle of some of the same language, even though they're different events? So it's really about finding the synergy in your messaging that helps to reinforce your DNA consistently, so it doesn't feel like there's a million things going on. It's really one thing. There's community happening, and here's a couple of different options of ways you can get plugged into all of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you this, Kevin. Talk a little bit about outsider versus insider language, okay? Yeah. And what I mean by that is, like, like when we're putting something together creatively, if it goes on a billboard, what does it say? If it's a sign out on the street, what does it say?
Right.
Maybe what are some buzzwords there that you may not necessarily need to even use when you're speaking about something from the platform. An example would be, man, we want to invite you to join us for whatever. Those are things that you say kind of outward facing. Or if you're running an ad digitally or on a billboard. When you get inside the church, it's like, man, we're going to dive into the life of Jonah.
Right.
Right?
Well,
We don't want to hear about Jonah when we're driving on the street.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't know who it is, especially if you didn't grow up in that culture, you have no who is Jonah. Like, is it maybe you're trying to talk about that song that Weezer had in the '90s, Jonas, and maybe you're just missing a few letters, like maybe that. No, I think that the element is understanding what insider looks like. It's hard for us in the church world sometimes to think about that. Like our perception of our world is dictated by what we experience on a daily basis. So if you're going in and you're experiencing these things on a daily basis, and this is your circle, and you all speak the same language, you actually start to lose an awareness of what's going on out there, right? What's going on in these streets, what's going on in the world around you. And so it's easy to get disconnected in your language and speak Christianese, speak a language, speak terminology, use short form that people just are not familiar with. They're not familiar, have a good born again experience. What does that mean to them? What does that mean to them? Like, are we going to talk about, man, this service is going to be rocking, the Holy Ghost is going to show up. They'll be like, who? First of all, I don't know that there's a ghost showing up in this service. Like, is this like paranormal files? Like, is that what's happening? Is this the X-Files? Am I coming to an X-Files service? I'm down. I'm an X-Files geek. Let's go. But like, that doesn't make sense to them unless they've been in church before and understand what does that mean. So if you're marketing and trying to build communications for people who are not of a church background, you have to be intentional about that language that you use, because it's so easy to slip into that pattern of just speaking what we're familiar with. I can start talking technical terms to somebody because I'm a geek and lose them completely on like what I'm trying to say because I'm speaking what's in my head. I'm not thinking about their perspective. So that's insider and outsider language. When you're communicating to your church, you can talk with a familiarity about programs inside your church. Hey guys, we have Growth Track every second Sunday or whatever, right? Like you can speak as if they should know that.
It's a great example.
You can't speak as if they should already know that. If it's an outside communication piece, it will get completely lost. And they're gonna be like, man, I missed something along the way. It's like, I don't know if you guys ever binge watch a TV series, and sometimes like you take a break to go eat and you come back and you go back to start the episode and you realize that you're watching an intro. Like they recap a lot of times. Like let's say you're watching Stranger Things. They recap it and you're like, wait a minute, I missed something. Like maybe I accidentally skipped the next episode.
Did we miss one? Did we
miss an episode? And now you're freaking out because you're like, oh my God. Oh, what's going to happen here? They died. So you just spoiled the whole thing. But like the reality is this the same experience if you're on the inside. And so if you're on the outside and you come in and the inside is being communicated without any consideration for you and your experience, it feels exactly like that. You're that lost. You have no idea what's going on. And if that's the norm, sooner or later it's gonna be like, man, I don't know if I can catch up. I start doing summer school. Like to catch up here, I'm lost. I'm drowning.
I think it's kind of like the difference in the message and like the KJV. Like you can use the message outside and everything. And
you're talking about the message translation.
Yeah, apologies. The message translation and then everything else. You can have the message translation on a billboard. You can put that on a mailer.
Word of God.
You can put that wherever it needs to go. And then when you get inside, you can dig into the
amplified.
Good old,
the amplified.
The amplified, the ESV, and all that
Greek.
stuff.
You can get
the
Greek. And
Greek. But
you got the comparison Bible going on when you're on the inside. That's a great example. I mean, I love the simplicity of the message translator, the paraphrase, right? It's a paraphrase of the King James, and so it's a very, very much broken into modern English. And I know when it came out, a lot of people kind of got upset because they felt like we're supposed to share it this way. But the reality is that's what we did in the beginning with the King James Version. Is they tried to do that. They tried to translate it from this into that, and we've done that ever since. We've tried to simplify this from the perspective of the people who are not familiar
No.
in a language that they know. It's
Yeah.
the same principle when it comes to, polishing your messaging. It's the same idea. Hey, how can I say this in a way that's going to relate to people?
So good.
So that takes a little bit of consideration about what's going on. And also you don't have to be, like up with all the latest news or anything like that to do that. You just have to know, hey, what am I saying
Right.
that I would only say if I was inside of this group?
Yep. No, that's so good. I even think about music too. Like when you get on-ramped into doing music or playing music, you start out learning keys. So like I'm in the key of like start with G, then I'm going to go to C. And so if you picked up a guitar and I taught you G and C, and then the next thing I say is, okay, now play a 1/3, you're going to be like, what's a 1/3?
Teach me the number system yet?
I haven't learned the Nashville numbering system yet. So that would be a more of an insider. Like it's going to take a little bit of time to develop. So it's the art of meeting people where they're at from a messaging standpoint. And so this is why the messaging from street to seat matters. And it's okay for it to morph a little bit. But I also think it morphs from that. Like we want to take people from G to 1/3.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm using that music analogy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So if you learn what a G over B is, and then you like, oh, it's the same thing as a 1/3, I got it. Well, the other thing is we have to have a tolerance as insiders of the church for the outsiders. So we have to be okay with saying, hey, if you're new here, man, we want to take a moment to say welcome. Also, we want to connect with you in these ways, blah, 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 every week. And it feels repetitive and it feels like, why are we doing that? Well, that's because it is somebody's first time.
Yeah.
That's because somebody actually built up the courage to like get themselves together, get their family together, and make it their first time in church. And hospitality matters, and people can feel your hospitality with your language.
Yeah.
The littlest things, man. Hello, we're so glad you're here. Hey, take a moment all across the room and let's just make our guests feel welcome. Could we clap for them and make them feel welcome? Little things like that, even in your messaging and encouraging that hospitality, makes a world of difference. It doesn't matter your background, doesn't matter what brought you to church. All of a sudden, we want to make outsiders feel like insiders, and we can do that with messaging. So why does this matter with creativity, and how does it connect to design? How does it connect to social media, websites, and things like that?
Absolutely. I mean, this is, for your brand, first of all, for your organization as a whole, for your church, you should have a messaging guide.
Great.
Here's what our tagline is as a church. Here's what our bio looks like. Here's multiple forms of that, shorter, longer, extended. A lot of times the kind of retro term for a messaging statement that is easy to communicate. You've probably heard the term elevator pitch. But back in the day, they had what was called a boilerplate. It literally was a plate when you had printing press, and it would be a short form of, hey, this is what this organization does. And so they had it ready to go, right? So if you've ever heard the term boilerplate, it literally is a shorter form communication about why you exist, what your organization exists for, who you're there to serve. And this is where it gets tricky because, a lot of churches will just copy and paste this information and not take the time to really develop their own version of that, their own story.
Yep.
And it's important to take that time as a team and really drill down. And I remember there was a season, like we're big fans of ARC, the Association of Related Churches, and they have a system that really works for the growth track. Know God, discover purpose, find freedom, make a difference. Like there's 4 kind of pillars, and a lot of times those pillars get communicated. It actually basically is in inward language. Like this is our mission. We want to help you know God, find freedom, know God, discover purpose, and then make a difference, right? So there's this journey that we want to take you on, which actually makes sense as a missional statement in some ways.
Yeah.
But if every church in a 20-mile radius has the same statement, it's a little confusing from a marketing standpoint. It might make sense to you on the inside.
Sure.
But on the outside, how would you say that in your language? How would you apply that to, hey, what do we really exist for as a church?
Right.
And how can we make this our own? How can we say this for us? And if your entire organization has worked through that journey and come up with that content, you're not going to stumble over those things.
Yeah.
Because those are needed on all kinds of elements. You need it on your website, on your social media, on any kind of ad you do.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of information that's key. But also in your onboarding, when you bring new people into the church or new people into the staff, hey,
Right.
we're gonna who are we as a church? well, I have something to point to. I'm not leaving it up to them, because then it becomes discombobulated and it becomes everybody's own version of it,
Right.
which you lose complete control over.
Yeah. So let me just expound on that just a little bit, because really you have kind of who you are, and then you have who you're trying to reach. And who you're trying to reach can really be divided up probably into like 6 to 9 different tribes, if you will.
Yeah.
And so let me give you some examples of tribes. Coffee people. Maybe it's motorcycle riders, maybe it's soccer moms, or something like that. It could be there's tribes in every church. It could
Yeah.
be athletes. It could be it could be whatever. But it's up to you guys to kind of identify who your tribes are or your audiences, and then how can you communicate in a way that's relevant to them. So
How can you communicate to the people like in my tribe that just like to binge watch shows and eat snacks? Like that's my tribe.
So much.
you can't reach them.
Unreachable.
They're a lost cause. No, but no, that's the thought is part of your messaging needs to consider your audience, right?
Right.
So depending on where you live, depending on who's in your area, like coming back down, it's like, would they be message people or would they be KJV people?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're Bible Belt, there may just be KJV people there. If you're in a different place that's less churched or more unchurched, you might want to tweak your messaging. And again, we're not talking about changing the message of the Bible. We're
No.
talking about your language and how you communicate. And I think that there should be some creativity involved in your messaging. And then once you lock down your messaging, you move it into, how do we wrap creative around this DNA, around this language? We always say that like your creative is essentially the Christmas wrapping paper around your mission, values, DNA, your language, and all of those things. And so, yeah, messaging does matter.
Messaging matters. I mean, it matters for campaigns. It matters for series. It matters for your organization in general. It matters for your teams. It matters for your volunteers. It matters for, even like you mentioned earlier, when someone's greeting you when you walk in. Like if you ever go to a Chick-fil-A, like you're gonna realize real quick that there's a shared language system that these people are using to describe every
it's their
aspect.
pleasure.
Right, it's my pleasure. Right, like they have these phrases that you're going to hear, and it's intentional.
Yeah.
And so you can get that detailed with it. You can get
Sure.
that like zoomed in, or you can go a little further out and go, okay, wait a minute, like as a whole, here's what we say. It might take a while to get that zoomed in, so that these people know. We know we're going to train. When people check their kids in, when people have to deal with situations that arise in kids ministry, because you have a kid maybe who's not behaving.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, hey, we have a kid not behaving, we have a way to describe that that's less traumatic sounding, right? So there's all kinds of ways that you can apply messaging to all those aspects, from either it's a creative concept or as your organizational operation as a whole. It might even go into how you deal with PR issues
Right.
as an organization externally, as well as HR issues internally. I'm going to address somebody who's maybe has some performance issues or maybe has some whatever inside the organization. How do we address this? It can go that detailed.
Yeah, that's great. Obviously, there's a lot more to unpack with this topic, but more than anything, we just want your teams to be thinking about it, to be talking about it, and if you're open to it, we'd love to have conversations with you about your messaging. So, as always, you can shoot us a DM, a message, message us. You can email us, hello@yellowbox.co or @helloyellowbox on Instagram. We'd love to hear your thoughts about messaging. And then if you just have questions of, man, how do I apply some of these concepts to our church right now? We'd love to chat through it with you and talk you through it, and see if we can help, because messaging matters.
Thanks for joining.
Yep.
See you next week.